Daniel, ready for a question from us to help us navigate? But can you kind
Sure.
of tell us what the executive orders really are? Do they apply to New York? And if not, what actions would we need to take place in order for them to directly override then New York state law? Help us.
Sure. So the good news is all of the school ones don't impact anything that we are doing in New York. And even though this looks like a lot on this page, there's actually way more of these executive orders. So these are, it's a genre that lets the federal executive take actions that are deemed necessary to manage the federal government. And in that context, there's some things that are very close to the president's fingertips that can be a proper subject of these, like the military. So the president has much more control over the military to issue executive orders to say, do X now. But we're dealing with education, and it's very far removed in that both political parties, it's rare to find a bipartisan issue, but both understand that education is primarily a state function. The federal government has provided a lot of guidance, support, money over the past several decades, but it is chiefly a state and local concern. So looking at all of these documents, they make very strong statements of policy in very strident and frankly, occasionally jarring and offensive language. But these do not impact the state policies that we have. And you would need to see a congressional change before you would have to adjust to any of this. So, and even then, there are some things that may be within Congress's control, such as Title IX, how it would like to define that law and its scope. But something like DEI, that's touching upon curricula, that's touching upon teachers, administrators, academic freedom to prescribe material for the classroom. And one of them here, looking at the list, is just kind of like a red herring here saying you can't have COVID-19 vaccine mandate. We're unaware of any K-12 institution that has such a mandate. So again, reiterating that these are primarily policy documents looking to shift the tone rather than make a legal change.
So Daniel, maybe you could pick up just for a second. You said it would take a congressional change. Maybe you can just highlight a couple of those. Just give us a sense of how difficult that is, because saying that it's just a statement is one thing, but having your community behind you saying, or that whole flavor. So you were explaining it to me the other day, and I thought, wow, that's a lot that has to happen in order for this to even begin to override New York State.
Yeah, so the first step would be that this would have to be something uniquely within Congress's control, that they can say, we do this and we want to change our position on it. You'd have to persuade enough people to, change or amend the law. Title IX, as many of you know, hasn't been touched. It's a handful of words. I don't remember 20 something words. Congress hasn't done anything with it in over 50 years. And that's because it's hard. It's hard to get people to agree to those monumental changes. And that's why a lot of the Title IX development has been regulatory in nature, because all the government has to let you know is it's taking a different interpretation. You get a chance to weigh in, and then there'll be judicial review. So that's what I would expect here. If, for example, Congress wants to pass the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus Act of 2025 and says, the United States recognizes these two genders, first you have to get a majority of people to vote for that. And then you're going to have to survive a legal challenge after that. And even then, I think there's a compelling argument by states to say, okay, that's fine that is going to be federal policy, but we can control the health and safety of our citizens, and we exceed your requirement. We protect non-binary people. We protect transgender people. So even assuming Congress made it through all those hoops, it's still going to have to show that it can override state police or education power, those kind of things that are uniquely within the ability of a state to regulate.
Daniel, good. I've got a follow-up question on Title IX, but I want to get one question in here that really pertains to something you said about military. So, Pete, you want to ask that question?
Yes, it's my understanding that these executive orders are applying to the U.S. Department of Defense schools around the world. That is correct, right, Dan?
Yes, those are considered adjuncts of the military rather than a public school system as we would know it.
Understood. Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Quick follow-up. So the military schools that are near our neighboring school districts, does this impact them in any way? Would there be any interaction between what has to happen or not at all at this point?
It's interesting. Yeah. So for those people on the Department of Defense schools, yes, they can be subject to new policies that, of course, in turn can be challenged. But we have learned occasionally these bases have civilians as well. So I haven't thought about that specific issue yet, but needless to say, it has been complicated to explain how it works when you're a civilian on a Department of Defense base and possibly going to schools off the base.
And Daniel has agreed ahead of time, folks, just so you know that we know that this is a quick moving, morphing kind of, all of these topics could change, not quickly, but could change. So Daniel has even been foolish enough to say that he'd even come back and have another update with us when needed. So Daniel, we may take you up on that offer.
For sure.